The Ford Explorer and Hyundai Palisade are two incredible rides, but there are some pretty key differences between the two of them. And in this video, we're going to dive in deep and I'm going to explain the differences between the Explorer and Palisade to help you figure out which one is probably best for you. So starting off underneath the hood, the Explorer has way more options when we look at the powertrain of the vehicle in comparison to the Palisade. So the Explorer has the option for a 2.3-liter turbocharged engine, a 3-liter turbo, and then a 3.3-liter traditional hybrid. When we look at the Palisade, it only has the option for a 3.8-liter V6. But one key difference is that the Palisade engine is naturally aspirated versus the other two, the 2.3-liter and the 3-liter turbo, are obviously turbocharged engines. We don't have to worry about turbo lag as much nowadays as we used to, but just go in knowing that because they're turbocharged engines, that's just one extra component that you have to worry about when it comes down to maintenance. If performance is really what you're after, you're going to want to look at the Explorer, ST, King Ranch, or the Platinum. And that's when we get that beefier 3-liter turbocharged engine instead. It's just like a night and day comparison, almost pretty much like 50% more horsepower and torque in comparison to the Palisade. I also want to thank you so much for helping to support the channel. It's kind of crazy as I creep up towards 20,000 subscribers, so thank you so much for the continued support. I do want to say I did hide a gift card code somewhere in this video, so you're the first one to find it and claim it, and it's yours. When we look at the drivetrains of the vehicle, in the US, you're going to find the Explorer with standard rear-wheel drive in pretty much every trim level, with the optional intelligent four-wheel drive when we look at Canada, so strictly going to be intelligent four-wheel drive in Canada versus optional down in the States. Looking at the Palisade, front-wheel drive is going to be standard in some of the lower trims in the US models. Outside of that, it's going to be an intelligent all-wheel drive in Canada and most trim levels of the States, available optionally. Looking at the exterior size of both vehicles, they are pretty much bang on with one another. The Explorer ST is slightly longer than the rest of the Explorer lineup, but I mean, if we look at the length, width, and height of these things, they are pretty much neck and neck with one another. Towing inside both vehicles is also very close. Inside of the Explorer, you're going to be able to pull between 5,000 and 5,600 pounds, versus in the Palisade, it's going to be 5,000 pounds. Versus the 5,600 pounds in the Explorer, you're going to find in the beefier 3-liter turbocharged engine instead. When we look at horsepower and torque specs inside of the Ford lineup, those are all achieved using a premium fuel. But look at minimum manufacturer's recommendation, and it's just regular 87 gas you need to use inside of the entire Explorer lineup. And that's the same way with the Palisade, so strictly going to be regular 87 as your minimum manufacturer's recommendation. Fuel economy is also very close between them as well. Like we look at that 2.3-liter turbocharged engine versus the Palisade's 3.8-liter V6, and they're like neck and neck with one another. So not too far off when we look at how much fuel you're going to be using, highway or city driving. You're going to find some very similar technology inside of both the Palisade and the Explorer, but there also are some key differences between them. Both vehicles have the option for a 360 camera, with it being known as the surround view monitor in the Hyundai world. You're going to have exterior features like reverse and forward sensing systems, reverse brake assist, and blind spot monitoring. But the blind spot monitoring inside of the Palisade is slightly different than what you're going to find inside of the Ford Explorer. So the Explorer has a blind spot system where the side view mirrors are going to highlight and let you know if somebody's entered the blind spot on either side. In comparison, the Palisade also has that feature, but there is the option for the blind view monitor, where it utilizes the side-mounted cameras and it's going to show you what's going on right inside of the cluster screen. So when you hit the return stick left or right, it's going to pop up and let you know exactly what's going on beside you. It is a really, really cool feature. The Explorer has the option for a manual, power, or hands-free liftgate, with the hands-free liftgate being standard in some trim levels, while the Palisade has a feature called the Smart Liftgate. So as long as you have the key fob on you, you can walk up to the trunk area of the vehicle, and as long as it recognizes the fob, it's going to automatically open up the liftgate for you. So no need for swiping your feet or pressing any buttons, it'll just pop open automatically, which is pretty cool. The Palisade has a small sunroof standard and a double broken up sunroof available as an option. So it's essentially like a dual pane sunroof with a little separation for the overhead in the middle. The front part of the roof by the driver, so the first row, is going to be able to slide. And then if we compare that to the Explorer, you're going to find in the Explorer a full panoramic sunroof instead. So that full panoramic roof, it just opens things up so nicely. The full thing won't open, it's still going to be the part just above the first row, but because it's full glass above, it just looks really, really nice in comparison. You're going to find an optional wireless charge pad inside of both vehicles, and they both do have media screens that support Android Auto and Apple CarPlay for a wired connection. I would love to see wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay inside of these things. And then technically in both vehicles, you could just hook up over Bluetooth if you wanted to just listen to music or make phone calls. It's just when you're using Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, you have to be plugged in through USB. If you're an audiophile, you're going to love what you find inside of both vehicles. The Explorer and the Palisade both have 6 speakers standard inside of the lower trim levels. In the Palisade, you've got the option for a 12-speaker Harman Kardon sound system, versus in the Explorer, you're going to find the option for either a 12 or 14-speaker Bang & Olufsen sound system. And those sound systems are really, really good. It's just like a complete night and day over the 6-speaker setup. So if you are an audiophile, you love music, you're going to want to look at one of the packaged options that give you that higher speaker capability. It's just a complete night and day difference from an audio perspective. The interior styling of the Explorer and Palisade are miles apart from one another. The Palisade has the option for a fully digital cluster screen that wraps fairly nicely into the media screen as well, which is kind of nice. And you're going to find a digital cluster as an option available inside of the Explorer as well. So the Explorer ST, King Ranch, and Platinum versions of the vehicle. And I love the animations when you look at those digital screens, like we shift between different drive modes, and it just looks really, really nice on both of them. The Palisade does have buttons in order to be able to shift between different gears versus the Explorer that's going to have a shift dial instead, so we can easily shift out gears by going left or right as necessary. Then when we turn the vehicle off, it's going to automatically drop us into park for either vehicle, which is kind of nice. The Explorer has the option for either 6 or 7 seats, with the second row seat available as dual captain's chairs or as a bench seat. You're technically going to find a similar setup inside of the Palisade, where that second row is going to have either dual captain's chairs or a bench. But when we jump into the third row of the Palisade, it's going to have 3 seats back there. So the Palisade has the option for either 7 or 8 seat configurations, but it's going to depend on which trim level of the vehicle that you're in. Versus in the Explorer lineup, we can get the 6 or 7 seat configuration in pretty much any of the trim levels. Spacing inside of both vehicles is fairly close. We look at the first row, I'm 6 feet tall, no issues. Second row, same thing, no issues. But when we get into the third row of the Palisade, it is fairly tight for me back there. A little bit tight inside of the Explorer as well, but you get a little bit more space I find in the Explorer. But one thing to note is that the Explorer is only 2 seats in the third row versus 3 seats in the Palisade. But either way, if you've got child seats, you've got front-facing, rear-facing seats, not a problem, because we've got all of our necessary anchors and tether points inside of both the second and the third row of both vehicles. You're going to find heated driver's seats standard in both vehicles, with the option to get ventilated first row seats and heated second row seats in the Explorer lineup, depending on the trim level and packages you've added on. But one cool thing is that inside of the Palisade, we also do have the option for heated and ventilated second row seats. That's just going to be for the outboard seats, but it still is pretty neat. We've got that available optionally, and that's something you just won't find inside of the Explorer, those ventilated second row seats. Heated still technically is there though. The Explorer does have the option for massage chair seats in the higher trim levels of the vehicle, and then inside of the Palisade, you're going to find that in the highest available trim level. Strictly for the driver's side in the Palisade, surprisingly, the price between both vehicles is pretty close. So in the Palisade, you're looking anywhere between $50,500 and $60,000, versus in the States, we're $36,500 versus about $53,000. In the Explorer, we're about $51,000 and $74,000. Versus in the US, we're $38,000 versus about $65,000. So fully loaded, the Palisade will have more technology than the Explorer, but you're going to be stuck with that 3.8 liter V6 regardless of the trim level that you look at. But then as we go up to higher trim levels inside of the Explorer, you would have the option for that higher powered 3-liter turbocharged engine, or you've got the 3.3-liter hybrid available in the limited or the platinum versions of the vehicle. But if power isn't really a big deal for you, we could spec them out fairly similarly by looking at the Palisade Limited in the States versus Urban in Canada. With all-wheel drive is going to bring us to $56,500 in Canada and about $50,000 in the US. The Ford equivalent would be the Limited 301A package with all-wheel drive, towing, and the twin-panel moonroof. And that's going to be $60,000 in Canada versus about $54,000 in the States. So they're pretty much on par performance-wise. You'd have a 360 camera, LED lamps, towing capacity up to 5,000 pounds, seating for 6 in the Explorer and 7 inside of the Palisade. You'd have heated and cooled first-row seats, as well as a hands-free liftgate inside of both vehicles. So, do you go for the Explorer or the Palisade? It's honestly going to depend on what you need out of a vehicle. Like if you need seating for 7 or 8 people, and you're looking for okay performance but more technology available, then the Palisade is probably the vehicle that you should be looking at. But if you're looking for a vehicle that maybe needs, 4, 5, maybe 6 seat configurations, you're looking for something with more power, you're going to want to look at the Explorer. So the Explorer is just night and day difference. I said like 50% roughly more horsepower and torque when we look at that 3-liter turbocharged engine instead of the engine we're going to find in the Palisade. So if power is your thing, you're absolutely going to want to look at the Explorer instead. We do have fairly similar warranties between both vehicles on top of that, and we do have roadside assistance included in both vehicles. It's almost like CAA or AAA down in the States where it's tied to the vehicle and not to the owner. So it's not like you can get somebody to, tow your Honda Civic using your Hyundai warranty or your Ford warranty. It's strictly tied to the vehicle, but it is nice it's available there as an option. So at the end of the day, they're both great rides with good styling and great available technology. But what do you think? What vehicle do you think you would go for? Share your thoughts down in the comments section of the video. And if you're looking for something a little bit more in-depth, you want a little bit more of an in-depth dive into the Explorer or the Palisade, you can also check out these videos and check down in the description for even more videos looking at each vehicle independently. But if you found this one useful, thumbs up, share it with somebody if you think they might find it helpful, and until I see you next time, take care.